As more and more begin to know, the status quo has got to go. They're bound to say yes to a man named Dr. No, a man who makes the establishment panic. Grassroots are growing way too wild, too organic.
So the House on Thursday passed a bill to provide Israel with $14.3 billion in military aid, a strong show of support for Israel's onslaught on Gaza, which has killed over 9,000 people so far. The Republican-authored bill would cut funds from the Internal Revenue Service to pay for Israel's aid, and this has drawn opposition from Democrats. So the bill passed in a vote of 226 to 196. Only 12 Democrats voted in favor, and it didn't get all that opposition from Democrats because they oppose sending new weapons to Israel. It's because they don't want to cut from the IRS. Two Republicans voted against the bill. Thomas Massie, who's been voting against all this Israel stuff, and you know he's been really good on this issue. Marjorie Taylor Greene also voted against it. Due to the IRS cuts that are included in the bill, the White House has threatened to veto it, and the Democrat-controlled Senate is working on its own version. So Democrats expressed frustration at the GOP bill, saying it will only delay getting more weapons to Israel, which already receives $3.8 billion in military aid from the U.S. each year. And when this thing first, after the October 7th Hamas attack on southern Israel, the U.S. started shipping additional military aid to Israel using some other funds that they had available.
Isn't that great? A house of fucking clowns. Who the fuck are you to steal my money to go give it to slaughter innocent people? Israel's the 18th richest country in the world. Taking my fucking money as I work my ass off and stealing your money? What a joke.
So this is Brian Mast. He's a Republican from Florida and a former member of the Israeli Defense Forces. He's a former IDF soldier. And he has dismissed the idea that there are innocent Palestinian civilians, and he made these comments in a debate on the House floor on Wednesday. So he said, quote, "I would encourage the other side to not so lightly throw around the idea of innocent Palestinian civilians as frequently said. I don't think we would so lightly throw around the term innocent Nazi civilians during World War II," end quote. So again, invoking World War II, invoking the mass slaughter of German and Japanese civilians to justify the mass slaughter of Palestinian civilians. We're seeing this pretty commonly now from U.S. and Israeli officials. So Mast actually recently wore his IDF uniform on Capitol Hill, which just demonstrates, I mean, could you imagine a member of Congress wearing a military uniform of any other foreign country? I mean, it would be an outrage. And he showed up on Capitol Hill with his uniform on. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So he made the comments about Palestinian civilians while the House was debating the Hamas International Financing Prevention Act, which is a bill that requires sanctions on alleged Hamas supporters. The bill requires presidential waivers to deliver humanitarian aid into Gaza and the West Bank, and that will slow down the delivery of food, medicine, and other supplies to civilians. If every delivery needs a waiver, that would really slow things down. And so Hezbollah attacked 19 Israeli positions simultaneously along the border, prompting a retaliatory assault from Israel a day before an anticipated speech by the group's leader, Hassan Nasrallah. So this is kind of a big deal. They announced that Nasrallah was giving this speech earlier in the week, and the flare-ups on the Israel-Lebanon border continue. Israel's really been doing a lot of damage in Lebanon. Dozens of people have been killed, thousands displaced. Israel also evacuated a lot of people from northern Israel. So the strikes that happened on Thursday, they said that they targeted the military positions along the border simultaneously with guided missiles, artillery shelling, and other weapons. So some people think that Nasrallah is going to come out on Friday and basically declare war against Israel and call for a full mobilization. And the attacks and fighting has been escalating across the border. So we will see what happens. And then, of course, the big question is the U.S. going to directly intervene if Hezbollah directly intervenes? Ukrainian Commander-in-Chief General Valery Zaluzhny acknowledged in comments to The Economist that the war in Ukraine is a stalemate and that there will most likely be no Ukrainian breakthrough. The general said, quote, "Just like in the First World War, we have reached the level of technology that put us in a stalemate. There will most likely be no deep and beautiful breakthrough," end quote. So China and the United States will discuss arms control and nuclear non-proliferation next week in the first talks of their kind in over 4 years. So the Chinese delegation will be led by Sung Xiaobo, who leads the Foreign Ministry's Arms Control Department. Wang Wenbin, a spokesman for the ministry, told a news conference on Thursday. So the U.S. will be represented by Mallory Stewart, the Assistant Secretary of State for Arms Control, Verification, and Compliance. according to the Wall Street Journal. So I think, again, this is good to see. The last time they held such talks was in July 2019. For a while there, the U.S. was trying to get China to join in on arms control talks with Russia, like trilateral arms control talks, nuclear arms control talks. But when it comes to Russia and China, that's just not enticing to China at all, because their nuclear arsenal is much smaller than what the U.S. and Russia have. The U.S. and Russia both have around 6,000 nukes. The U.S. slightly less than 6,000, and Russia has just slightly more. And China, according to the current estimates, has 300, 400. The U.S. is claiming they have 500, I think, now, but still nothing close to what the U.S. and Russia have. So that offer was always a non-starter. But the U.S. and China could theoretically work out some kind of deal on deployments, prohibiting deployments in, Southeast Asia or in the Asia Pacific. There are things that the U.S. and China could work out on their own. But I'm pretty pessimistic about the state of U.S.-China relations, but still, I think it's good to see arms control talks.
Here's Gerald Salenti with today's trends in the news.
One, when all else fails, they take it to war. And that's what they've done. They do it all the time. The Netanyahu government was failing. People hated him. Protests going on. And as we talk about later on, and we've been writing in the Trends Journal, the facts that are coming out is that Netanyahu knew about this was going to happen, didn't want it, and they let it happen. And all those people who are protesting, now they're all supporting him. So anyway, this is from several months ago. I do a podcast on Alex Jones on Monday. And this is the tweet we put out. Ready to die? Keep your mouth shut. Do what your government tells you and obey politicians. Swallow prostitute crap. World War III has begun. If we don't stop it, we'll be dead. We have to beat them. Here's what to do. One of the things to do is do anything you can, any way you want, in a peaceful way, for the name of peace. You want to donate to Occupy Peace? I fight for peace. I have rallies. I do what I do. Whatever you want to do. If you don't do anything, you deserve to get wiped out. When we're all going to get wiped out, as if we don't stop what's going on in the Middle East. It's pure genocide in front of everybody's eyes. And I'm no longer supporting RFK Jr. Very heartbroken, because I really believed in him, and he's so pro-Israel. And Max Blumenthal, a Jewish guy, did this clip with Jimmy Dore about a month or two ago, ripping into what RFK Jr. is saying. And Blumenthal goes to what they used to call Palestine. And, so for all the people that say, no, it wasn't Palestine, again, from our Trends Journal, 2006, Crusades 2000. Regardless of what England's reasons or intentions, self-serving or otherwise, Crusades 2000 was set in motion by the 1917 Balfour Declaration that laid the foundation for Israel. Quote, His Majesty's government views with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. Establishment in Palestine. There's some fucking gangster fucking prick called His Majesty. And all you little fucking scumbags, don't send me your fucking emails about using the word fuck. You're a ballless little piece of shit. You're in a fight for your life, and you don't like the language? You don't like the language as slaughter is going on? The job, you're looking at the job numbers. The cost of labor unexpectedly declined in third quarter. This is from today. This is after the fucking feds, and it's in your Trends Journal, month after month after month after month, we're blaming inflation on higher labor costs, when labor costs are well below inflation numbers. And when you go to the real inflation numbers, they're more than double what they are, according to John Williams' shadow stats. So now they're happy that labor costs are going down. Oh, the markets are going up as labor costs are going down, which means that people are getting poorer. But don't worry, the big companies are making money. That's all that counts. And they're counting a lot of nothing more than
Bullshit detected. Take precaution.
Yeah, you better take precautions.
Bullshit level, DEFCON 5.
Yep. So that's the way I feel about the markets. And again, we said, and get these things, you said it would crash. I said there was a high likelihood it would crash. But how about all the other trend forecasts we get right? And I also said that it would go down in September and October when I don't know who else was saying that. We said that back in July when the markets were going up in July when we said it. So save your fucking shit. Oh, commercial real estate lending slows down. Oh, the markets went up, Commercial real estate lending slowed down. You ready? The biggest victims have been office owners who had to refinance expiring loans at a much higher rate. It's all out of the news, the office building bust. It's one of our top trends. Out of the news, this thing is going to go down big and hard. But don't worry about it. Everybody's going to forget about it as we're all getting annihilated in nuclear war. Home prices hit record as sales fall. Oh, so now you have the median existing home sale rose 2.8% in September from a year earlier to $394,300, according to the National Association of Realtors. You ready? A home buyer needed an income of nearly $115,000 to afford the median priced U.S. home in August, assuming a 20% down payment. A home buyer, so that could be like one person. Median household income in the USSA is $74,000. You're a little short. Oh, the markets are going up. What, are you kidding me? Of course. The cost of labor unexpectedly declined in third quarter. Yep. Mentioned that already. Wage growth hits 2-year low. Oh, they were blaming wage growth for inflation, not the fucking cheap money that the Federal Reserve banks to gangsters put in there with zero interest rate policy. That didn't have a fucking thing to do with inflation. Not the trillions of dollars that Trump and Biden dumped in to fight the COVID war. Fake fucking money. That had nothing to do with inflation. It's labor costs. So the Fed, again, we said it, been saying it, again, only for a better part of the year. They're going to lower interest rates next year in the run-up to the presidential reality show because the bankster gangsters are running White House. That's the former Fed head, the one you just saw. Powell is the current Fed head. The former Fed head is our Treasury Secretary. The bankster gangsters are running the country. They're going to lower interest rates.
You will have noticed it's become increasingly difficult to oppose, for example, war and military action. It's become increasingly difficult to criticize big companies. And also, generally, we're living in a more and more fractured space. I would say we need more decentralization, more ability to freely communicate, more opportunity to form new alliances against the establishment interests that are plainly trying to control us. They're not interested in relatively insignificant figures like me. They are interested in total control of the population. And they're heading in the right direction because you know that legislation is being passed all around the world that allows them to penalize social media companies that promote or platform content that they don't like. Of course, it always starts with hate speech because they know, generally speaking, we are opposed to hate, but it always ends up advancing the interests of the powerful. The great criticism, other than the genocides, of communism was that it created vast centralized bureaucracies where ordinary people were irrelevant and could be controlled. Well, look at what you've got now. You've got vast centralized bureaucracies. Who is it that I'm arguing with? This has happened in real life as well. This has happened notably with the Grenfell situation. That's a tower block that burned down in this country. When you try and see whose fault it is, oh, this person subcontracted to that person, that firm subcontracted to that firm. It's very difficult to say who's causing this, who's behind this, where is power, who's in control. There are these vast, invisible, bureaucratic organizations where you can't actually access or purchase power. You can't say, well, hold on a minute. What are these community guidelines? Who do we talk to? What did we do wrong? Tell us so that we can amend it. That's literally Kafkaesque. Someone must have been telling lies about Joseph K. because he was arrested one morning. That's like how, of course, the trial starts. Who said it? What am I supposed to have done? I'm afraid we can't tell you that. What have I done? We can't tell you that. And corporations and the state are in lockstep together. That is truly what fascism means. There are other inflections. There are other exorcizations of that power. There are potentially minority groups that are persecuted. That is, of course, one of the worst aspects. There are new rules that are undemocratically brought about. But what we are seeing, I believe, is an advance towards centralized authoritarianism being oddly legitimized as protecting people and helping people and protecting a community. What community? Any of you that saw our interview with Dr. Robert Epstein will know that Google have an incredible amount of power when it comes to managing media spaces and news narratives. His work is incredible. He showed how, for example, Google can promote stories that could change the outcome of an election. Of course, if whenever you Google something, what comes up is favorable to one political party or one political movement, say, obviously that's going to influence the reality that people live within. Now, Google don't want anyone else doing that. Google don't want anyone anyone else offering an alternative version of reality, an alternative narrative. For example, a decentralized world where the individual is sacred, where community is sacred, where we have the maximum amount of ability to control our own communities through democracy, debate, discussion. The fact is that due to technologies, miraculous technologies like this, that have to a degree come about as a result of competition and capitalism, but also have received significant funding from, for example, the CIA in the early days of some of those organizations. Those are stories you're familiar with. They don't want anyone rising up now to give alternative versions of reality. For example, Rumble, our home. They don't want that happening, and here's further evidence of that fact. In a significant event leading up to the Republican presidential primary debate in August, Rumble was granted exclusive rights to provide a free online broadcast. However, it became apparent that Google search had buried references to Rumble's stream of the debate. Users searching for the debate stream on Google were ushered to links from YouTube, Fox News, and various news reports instead of Rumble. Remember, Rumble was streaming the presidential primaries for free, whereas Fox News was charging. So even if you just reduce yourself to a consumer, and believe me, they've reduced you to that, you're getting a worse deal even from that narrow and limiting perspective. This incident holds significant implications for digital free speech and competition in the online sphere. It also raises important questions about the role and responsibilities of dominant internet platforms in relation to smaller emerging entities. When we view this through the lens of censorship, it serves as a poignant reminder of how tech giants can shape what is accessible to users. Practices like these could lead to a monopolistic information environment where curiosity, choice, and access are limited. Rumble is currently in discovery regarding legal action against Google, accusing the tech behemoth of anti-competitive practices. Rumble alleges that Google is unfairly promoting its own video platform, YouTube, at the expense of competitors. Why does this matter? Because it becomes about free speech. It becomes about what information you have access to. It becomes about who determines what version of reality is promoted and what version of reality is de-amplified to the point you're not even aware that it's there. Ultimately, because of the ability for these monopolies to form powerful relationships with the state, it creates the possibility for centralization and authoritarianism on an unprecedented scale. If that gets underwritten by law, as is currently happening, you'll soon be in a space where you literally can't say anything that's anti-establishment. They've already created that principle by saying these things can never be said. You can't say that, you can't criticize this, you can't criticize that. Once you agree around anything, then you've established that principle, haven't you? Oh, there are certain things we agree you can't say. Yeah, I suppose so. You don't want people using racist or hateful language? Good, absolutely. And also, what about criticizing wars? What about criticizing COVID? What about criticizing Big Pharma? What about criticizing the state? Not just about shutting down alternative platforms, it's about promoting a particular news agenda. Remember, we continually tell you here on our channel, the function of the media is not to give you information. Here's some information, make your own choice. You might get that from a great journalist like Matt Taibbi or Glenn Greenwald or Barry Weiss. Here's some information, you work it out for yourself. But what you'll get in legacy media is the amplification of the agenda of the powerful, the normalization of the agenda of the powerful. Oh, everyone's staying indoors now and wearing masks. Oh, okay, are we sure we've done enough tests? Yeah, tests have been done on that. Okay, everyone, this is going to happen now. These wars are happening. What, have we looked into that? Is there a peaceful solution? You're not allowed to discuss those things. So recognize that it's okay for us to disagree. It's all right. It's necessary. It's part of being human. But don't hand over that degree of power to centralized authoritarian regimes and organizations that do not have your best interests at heart, because they want you neutralized. That's what they primarily want. Neutralization. They want you neutered.
June 18th, 1787, pretty much started out with John Dickinson. So he made a motion. The Committee of the Whole agreed that the Articles of Confederation should be amended, quote, so as to render the government of the U.S. adequate to the exigencies, the preservation, and the prosperity of the Union. And that postponement was agreed by 10 states. And then Hamilton arose and began a speech which lasted the rest of the day that they were there. And he did not like either plan. And here from the notes from Madison, he was particularly opposed to that from New Jersey. What a surprise. Being fully convinced that no amendment of the Confederation leaving the states in possession of their sovereignty could possibly answer the purpose. Clearly, and we're going to get into this a little bit more, he did not like the states or the people of the states having any remaining sovereignty, final authority. He wanted it all in a central government. And he even talks about, well, he talks about getting rid of the states completely. But moving forward, before he gets into his 11-point plan, and I'm going to highlight a number of those, he spoke about what he considered, quote, the great and essential principles necessary for the support of government. These are the 5 essential principles for the support of government to Alexander Hamilton. Some of them maybe don't sound as crazy as the others, but this is what he thought was essential. And you can take from it whatever you would like. 1, an active and constant interest in supporting it. 2, the love of power. Men love power. That's exactly what it says. 3, a habitual attachment of the people. 4, and what a surprise, force. And this is basically what he was telling the states. I mean, it's not 100% certain that he was writing this in debate with the Anti-Federalists just after the Philadelphia Convention, but it's probable it was him saying, hey, we're going to come in, you guys got to ratify as it is, or you're going to get it whether you like it or not. So 4 is force, by which may be understood a coercion of laws or coercion of arms. Think about that in relation to the whiskey tax as well. 5, influence. Madison writes that he did not mean corruption, but a dispensation of those regular honors and emoluments, which produce an attachment to the government. Certainly when he was part of Washington's team in the government after ratification, he certainly handed out a lot of those regular honors and emoluments. So he put that type of thing in practice. Now, next up, he is going to get into his 11-point plan, but he first starts out by suggesting that getting rid of the states is actually a really good idea. He said if they were extinguished, he was persuaded that great economy might be obtained by substituting a general government. Now, he did not mean, however, to shock the public opinion by proposing such a measure. So he just pointing out, just offhand that, well, it would be much more efficient if we got rid of these states and then we could just have one government telling everybody what to do at all times. Now, of course, they're going to still need people in more local positions, but he gets in that in a moment. He said, on the other hand, he saw no other necessity for declining it. So in other words, the only reason to say let's not get rid of the states is that not enough people in the general population would be on board with it. They're going to be shocked. He recognized he didn't want to shock the public opinion. He said the states are not necessary for any of the great purposes of commerce, revenue, or agriculture. Subordinate authorities, he was aware, would be necessary. There must be district tribunals, corporations for local purposes. In other words, get rid of the states. He wanted whether either they're going to be states or districts. He basically was suggesting that the best way forward is to have one central government and some local officials that are basically merely corporations of that central government. So that was his approach. So let's get through some of these highlights of his actual plan. And the first one starts out with this. Again, June 18th, 1787. You'll be able to read it in full. It will be linked to in the show notes, along with everything else over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/path-to-liberty. Hamilton writes, or says, he read through this, the supreme legislative power of the United States of America is to be vested in 2 distinct bodies of men, the one to be called the Assembly, the other the Senate, who together shall form the legislature of the United States, with power to pass all laws whatsoever, subject to the negative hereafter mentioned, so the veto power. But the power to pass all laws whatsoever. This was eerily similar to the British Declaratory Act of 1766, which Parliament gave the colonies after the colonists nullified the Stamp Act and they were forced to repeal to kind of save face. But then they turned around and they passed this act that said that they had powers over the colonies, quote, in all cases whatsoever. So anyone who was paying attention to this was like, oh man, we want a general or a central government with power, all laws whatsoever. Is not too much different. And if you think about what the revolutionaries fought a war for independence to get away from, a big part of it, if not the root cause, was the Declaratory Act. The notion that there was a far-off parliament that could pass laws in all cases whatsoever. Paine put it this way: Britain, with an army to enforce her tyranny, has declared that she has a right not only to tax, but to bind us in all cases whatsoever. So Hamilton is basically trying to establish the same system, the British system, that he was a part of getting away from. And Paine continued, and if being bound in that manner is not slavery, then is there not such a thing as slavery upon earth? Even the expression is impious, for so unlimited a power can belong only to God. Now, Thomas Jefferson talked about this kind of proposal. Of course, the proceedings at the Philadelphia Convention were mostly secret, but Jefferson had gotten his hands on some of James Madison's notes at some point, and here's a letter that he wrote to George Washington in 1792, pointing out that his objection to the Constitution was that it wanted a Bill of Rights. So he was concerned about a lack of a Bill of Rights, securing freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom from standing armies, trial by jury, and a constant habeas corpus act. Jefferson continues, Colonel Hamilton's objection was that it wanted a king and House of Lords. So Jefferson's pointing out that where I objected to the Constitution was I just wanted to see a Bill of Rights. What Hamilton didn't like was that it didn't have a king and a House of Lords. He also wished the general government should have power to make laws binding the states in all cases whatsoever. Jefferson was certainly aware of what that meant, especially when you're talking about going back to the Revolution and the Declaratory Act. Now, and then here's story number 2 from Jefferson in a letter to Benjamin Rush. He said, the room being hung around with a collection of the portraits of remarkable men, among them were those of Bacon, Newton, and Locke, very important people to the founding generation. Hamilton asked me who they were, as if he was clueless. Maybe he was being coy. Jefferson said, I told him they were my trinity of the 3 greatest men the world had ever produced, and then naming them. He paused for some time and then said, "The greatest man that ever lived was Julius Caesar."
Part of the reason that they are able to do so much damage is people believe that we need these unconstitutional agencies, the alphabet agencies. And we saw, especially with COVID, that we'd be better off without them. They're probably still today pushing these shots, even though 98% of people know that they don't want to take it anymore. So the FDA, the CDC, WHO, all of these, in libertarians, we've been saying, no, you need the free market, not these government agencies, because the government agencies can also be captured. They could give you a false sense of security, and they can make corporations rich. But the argument is the opposite. No, if you didn't have these corporations would trample all over us. Well, you do have them, and the corporations are trampling all over us. And they don't catch. You can't expect them to catch all the little. People are very creative. They're in breaking laws, but they don't even catch the big stuff. They don't catch the Madoff. The other day we see Sam Bankman-Fried. There's the SEC. There's the financial regulators are out the wazoo, and all this takes place even with them there. So what good are they doing anybody? But they allow, whether willfully or not willfully, these major crimes to take place. So we libertarians are right. We would be much better without them. And the big pharma COVID thing was even bigger. They were going for 7 billion shots. That was the goal. They failed, but that was the goal. So we would be much better with a free market. We have a long way to go and a lot of education for people to accept such a thing. But hopefully all of these episodes are at least, strengthening our case that we need free markets and not all these alphabet agencies.
Easy to adapt this to monetary policy, and what I talk about quite frequently is that people who are really worried about inflation. Inflation to them is, the prices going up, not the printing of money. But if people get upset enough and they have the proper understanding, what do they have to do? They have to get rid of one big bureaucracy, and that would be the Federal Reserve, because the source of so much trouble comes from there, the economic intervention and the foreign policy intervention. But the other thing that's occurring, and there's a little bit of a monkey wrench put in, the development and the collusion of big government and big pharma. And they've done this for years. The first time I ever thought about that problem was when the FDA might withhold certain drugs for the benefit of those who have the drugs, and there would be competition. So there was a lot of politicking going on there. Now it's the government comes in and they take over and test it, and they will protect pharmaceutical companies. And up until just recently, they're making billions and billions of dollars. But it's nice to see the market. It's an odd way of being democratic and voting with their dollars. I don't need any more shots, and I think that is very good. But the other intrusion to fortify the whole thing about cultural Marxism and corporatism is getting government and big business. Banking is already there together and marching there. Now they're controlling medicine and the pharmaceuticals, and they've certainly done that with the military-industrial complex. But it's the Larry Finks of the world that I think people should be alerted to, because he's running a money market account, the largest in the world, I believe, or maybe second place on some days. Trillions, $10 trillion of money they operate. So they can change and alter the money. Some days their movements can be bigger than the Fed. And yet they work with the corporations, and they will tell people what they have to do, and they'll set some of the rules. And this is where this ESG stuff comes from. Have these socialistic rules that if your company doesn't follow these rules of aggressive socialization, you can't get the loan, or they'll block the loan. They'll control you through the monetary system, and they will work with the Federal Reserve and the government. And it's all for good reasons, because the ESG movement, these are wonderful things. You as a company, if you want to be part of our gang, you have to do some things. You have to be very conscientious about the environment, and they're not on the right side of that issue. They also want to have people follow certain social rules and regulations, and making sure that nobody gets ever discriminated against, all this perfection. People say, well, no, we don't want to do that. And also, it has to be that you have to satisfy government regulators too and follow the rules. And this ESG movement has made it where if you don't have the credentials, they can hurt you on your stocks. They can make it difficult for you to get loans. It's a lot of them will capitulate. That's the only way we can do business. We have to play this game. So they invest their money and get approval from places like Larry Fink. So that to me, I think is very, very dangerous. We saw that, in so much of the COVID that people had to do it and listen to them, and then they got the approval. Otherwise, they lose their jobs. And so I think it's the big danger of what we're talking about is it advancing. Yes, corporatism is when government and business, work together. And some people say, well, this is just, friendly advice and this kind of stuff. But no, it gets bigger and bigger, and that's why it's called corporatism. And it's also why many people now are warning about, actually morphing into fascism. When business and government become one issue and one unit, you're on a road, if not already there, into a fascist system. We're not there yet, but I'd like to make sure that we do everything we can to prevent it.
Fantastic, Dr. Paul. I will finish up with my closing thoughts. Power relies on fear. Wherever you see mass fear, you can be sure that there is a government looking to take away liberty and corporations looking to take your money. Okay, and we are led from one fear event to another, and they're big enough to encompass enough people. Whether it was COVID, and we moved immediately to Ukraine. Once the Ukraine well dried up, and Ukraine is nowhere near going to win anything, it went right to the Middle East. And, I talked about the left. Now the right has abandoned everything. The MAGA is gone. There is no Make America Great Again, because now their focus is U.S. intervention in the Middle East. And with each of these events, our freedom and money are taken away. So Americans on both sides, left and right, have to snap out of this. We're being led by our emotions. And, think of all those, we need to worry about this country, and it's gone. Those red hats are empty, but it's very, very hard. These people that are in charge of the propaganda are so good. They're masters of it, to where everywhere you look, you will see the same message.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms
to push their own personal bias. And agenda to control exactly what people think. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
And you'll see celebrities say the same thing, and athletes and sports teams. They all have the one message, and nobody wants to be different. They just go along with the crowd, because if they're different, they get kicked out of the crowd. So it's very tough, but for the few that think for themselves and take care of their families, when you see this stuff, when you see this mass, whatever they call it, hypnosis, psychosis, look the other way, beware, because people are getting taken to the cleaners again. Don't let it happen to you and your family.
Very good. The solution is available, it's understood, and we should work toward it, but it's perfection in many ways, and that is not about to happen, and it depends on the morality of the people, and that is that everybody gets to make their own choices. If you're in government, it hurts a lot of people, and it's hard to get out of it, just like we're working to get out of the damage that COVID did. But if you get your freedom and have your freedom, you get to keep all the money you earn, and you get to do what you want as long as you don't hurt people or steal. And then some people might still fail. They might not have a good product. They might not work hard enough. They might not have it. But then they say, see, I can't quite make it. I have to have help. So I'm going to the government. And the government can steal some money from somebody else and then take care of me. And that's the authoritarian approach. It's still there. It still works. And it's motivated because it's always based on a humanitarian argument. You don't care about people. I care about people. And I think the best way to care about people is to provide and promote personal liberty. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.